An interesting video on TikTok, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on it. So I'm going to play it first.
If you engage with distractions more than you engage with your passions and you think about the past more than you live in the present, you may as well already be one of those people floating around on those hoverboard things from the movie Wall-E. If you
So now I want to highlight some comments that I found interesting from this video, right? As you can imagine, the video like this produces a very divided comment section, and I wanted to give my take. So first of all, what is she saying in general, right? That if you spend more time, or rather, if you waste more time than you spend pursuing your passions or the things that you find interesting, and if you spend more time, thinking about the past, right? Thinking about what was, then you're basically living a meaningless life, or you're not doing anything substantive with your life, right? That is what I understand from what you said. And so I find the comment section to be quite interesting. I think it demonstrates sort of a problem with social media. I think particularly TikTok, because I think TikTok is very personal, right? People will get on here and it's very different than YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, the other short form content. There's a reason why people are so addicted to TikTok is because it's so relatable, right? It's literally just people just talking, giving testimonies, and it feels very personable, right? You feel like you're almost talking to people. And there's a personability about TikTok that really hooks people to it. And that's why it's so hard to stop doom scrolling, I feel like, on TikTok in particular. And so I wanted to address these comments, right? And so I think one thing you'll find interesting is that there are two archetypes of people in these comment sections, right? One, an excuse maker, or two, a person who's willing to say, hey, she's actually sort of right in what she's saying. So first of all, do I agree with what she's saying? I'd say I agree, obviously. I think what she's saying is sort of a common sense thing, right? You spend more time being distracted than pursuing your passions, right? So things like doom scrolling or just empty, meaningless stuff that isn't really furthering the pursuit of your goals or passions, right? And then obviously, if you spend more time thinking about the past, right, thinking about what was than the present or the future, then you're not really doing much, right? And so you're just spending most of your time either being distracted or just reminiscing, and you're not really doing anything meaningful and substantive. And so obviously this is a call out to a lot of people who just spend most of their day doom scrolling. And in all honesty, it's something that a lot of us can work on. It's something I can certainly work on. I'll admit that for sure. And so, you know, there are videos that are out there like this on TikTok where, people do personally feel attacked and it reflects in the comment section. Look at this comment here that says, some of us don't have a choice. And I do really like the reply to this comment, which is why I also screenshotted the reply, because I feel like that's a mentality. What do you mean some of us don't have a choice? You have a choice. I mean, when it comes to following your passions or following distractions, and the thing is, people don't realize these videos are very general, right? They're supposed to be general, right? I don't think people, it seems like people on TikTok or some maybe on social media, they're just incapable of comprehending that idea that, you know, a video cannot possibly be made to apply to every single possible circumstance in the world, right? I can only make one video, right? How many like exceptions, how many things do I have to mention in that video so that you're exempt from what I'm saying, right? It's a general video. It's generalizable, right? Everyone will always have some sort of crazy, wild story or some trauma or whatever it may be, some disease, and they're exempt from, the main message of the video because I don't know, it doesn't apply to them for whatever reason, right? It's generalizable, right? So if you're watching this content, right, think a little bit and realize that it's supposed to be generalizable, right? And so some of us don't have a choice. I mean, I just disagree. I disagree with that in a general sense, right? You have a choice between either being distracted, right, wasting time doom scrolling on social media, or actually doing something substantive with your time. To pretend like you don't have a choice between doing something substantive and doing something meaningless is just asinine. People just don't want to take accountability for where they are, right? It's always someone else's fault, right? Something you hear a lot. I have ADHD. And this is a bit of a hot take, but I just don't think that just because you're doom scrolling, you have a low attention span or you have ADHD. Some of you are just addicted. And the first step is to admit that you're addicted. Don't just say I have ADHD when you're doom scrolling, when you're spending hours on your phone just scrolling, not doing anything. Just say, I'm addicted. And what's important is admitting that and taking a step forward, right? And so I really like this comment because it calls the person out, basically saying, it's a mentality. It's a mentality. So change your mentality, right? Here's another comment at the top here, right? Wow, so constructive. Using shame as a punishment surely doesn't push the offending party further into their behaviors. I think people are just, again, people don't like being called out. People don't like taking accountability. Accountability is hard. And so when people feel personally attacked by a video, it's going to reflect. And you can see by this comment here. What you guys want your hands to be held, right? It's a serious addiction when it comes to doom scrolling and all this stuff. It's serious. It's not a joke. And sometimes things just need to be said as they are, right? I'm not necessarily an honesty is the best policy. Well, I believe in sugarcoating, right? But I also believe in sometimes just saying it how it is. It's all circumstantial. But generally speaking, I'll always try and spare a person's feelings. Right? I'll always try and spare a person's feelings and say something in the least harmful way because I don't want to hurt people's feelings if I don't have to, right? I think that's the general. I think most people are like that. They don't want to just hurt people's feelings because it doesn't feel good hurting people's feelings. And so if I can avoid that, I will. However, this comment here, like, what do you want? It doesn't push the offending party further into their behaviors using shame. I mean, you guys need to be, if you have a severe addiction, you need to be snapped out of it somehow. You need to be snapped out of it somehow. And you want your hand to be held and you want to be told, it's good to spend hours, on Insta doom scrolling or TikTok doom scrolling. You want to be told that, you want to live in a world that's all sunshine and rainbows where, people are just going to tell you, hey, it's all okay. Everything's going to be all right. Don't worry. You have a serious problem, but don't worry. It's going to be all right. You just want to live in a world that doesn't exist, in a fantasy land, right? Be honest with yourself and where you are and take accountability, right? I think this comment just demonstrates that people will do anything but take accountability, right? Try and blame the girl for saying the truth, right? That you shouldn't just be spending your time being distracted all the time and not focusing on anything substantive, that you shouldn't just be thinking about the past, but living in the present and thinking about the future, right? But instead of addressing that, just say that she's shaming you. Well, too bad. If you feel called out, then just say that. But don't try and pretend like it's on her, that you're the one who's wasting their time, right? I do like the second comment here because, again, it's some support for her, right? She's right. She's right. Right? Rumination, tendency to dwell on negative thoughts. You learn about that in psychology. If you took AP Psych, shout out. If you're taking psychology here in college, right? Rumination, right? Tendency to dwell on negative thoughts sort of goes to overthinking. I can make another video about that in all honesty in and of itself, overthinking. But it's definitely something that can hold us back, right? When we overthink or when we dwell too much on certain thoughts. And so it's something that is hard to break, but you have to look at it as something that, you can work towards little by little breaking, right? And so again, this comment here, very motivating. Thank you. I thought you were going to help us fix it, I'm not sure if this saying is applicable, but I'm going to say it anyways, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. People just want to be held through the entire process, right? Very motivating. Thank you. Like, I understand that, doom scrolling and all that is so normalized. It's so normalized nowadays. And you're probably wondering, why do I keep bringing up doom scrolling even though she never said anything about that? I think her point about distractions over passions really relates directly to doom scrolling and wasting time on social media. Because I think the number one thing that's wasting people's time right now is social media, for sure, because we all have phones, right? And so social media, I feel like, is the number one killer of time at this point. I mean, I wasted so much of today just on TikTok, doom scrolling. And so The first comment, I thought you were going to help us fix it, right? This is a personal issue, right? If you have a problem with doom scrolling or with staying focused, that's something you have to work on yourself, right? People aren't going to hold your hand through life. If you have certain problems, I understand you might need help, right? And you might need to go seek out the help. But at the end of the day, if you have doom scrolling problems or problems on social media, whatever, I mean, what do you want people to tell you when it comes to fixing these problems, right? It's pretty obvious. You need to find something else to do with your time, right? Something else to do with your time that is actually entertaining, but is also substantive, right? People always talk about reading books, learning a new language. I don't know. Maybe it looks different for you, but this is a problem I feel like that you need to fix on your own, right? Yeah, at some point too, especially when you get to the point of adulthood, you're going to need to be able to sort of navigate your own problems, right? People aren't just going to be there to hold your hand throughout the entire thing. And sometimes you need to be told the truth and you need to be told what's actually happening, right? And then the second comment, very motivating. Thank you. I mean, again, this is a problem, for each individual to solve on their own, right? You guys want people to tell you every little thing that you need to do to fix your problems and to get your life on track, right? Look at where you are. Look at what you're doing. Do you really need people to tell you what you're doing wrong? you know? And maybe you do. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know. But don't expect people to hold your hand throughout the entire process. Sometimes you got to learn things the hard way. Sometimes you got to do things on your own. People aren't always going to be there to hold your hands. Grow up, in all honesty. That's what I say to these two comments. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, yeah, this first comment here. This was just mean, bro. Depression does things. I mean, everyone's depressed nowadays, right? This is gonna be. I'm gonna try. I'm not trying to be offensive here when I say this, but you know, I just don't like seeing people just constantly make excuses for this type of for behavior. Just admit that you're just doing something wrong, depressed or not. And again, just admit you're doing something wrong. Just admit that it's that you have a part to play. You're the one who's ultimately doing these things. Depressed or not, you shouldn't be spending all your time doom scrolling, right? Maybe it's obviously if you're depressed and you're feeling sad, much harder, right? To escape those feelings. And much harder to and much easier to fall into things like that, right? Like doom scrolling and whatever it may be. Things that are addictive, right? When you're not feeling happy, when you're really miserable. But people are always so quick to make excuses. And so I'm not saying that this person in the top comment is making an excuse, but I just find it interesting how those are two things that I see so often, right? People are depressed or people have ADHD. If I have a scrolling problem, well, suddenly I have ADHD. If I have a scrolling problem, well, suddenly I have depression. And again, I'm not trying to diminish people's problems. I'm not trying to say that depression isn't real. Of course not. It is. I'm just trying to say that we can't all be victims out here. Sometimes we just have to admit we're doing something wrong. And it's okay. That's the first step to fixing it, right? And so the second comment again is more reminiscent of the first one. And sure, you can fault her for not giving advice, I guess. But I mean, you guys really need advice when it comes to not doom scrolling. You guys really need advice when it comes to following, your passions or following your dreams instead of wasting your time. You guys really need advice when it comes to living in the present and living in the present, yeah, and not thinking about the future and thinking about the future as opposed to just thinking about the past or dwelling on the past. You guys really need a solution. When it comes to the rumination, dwelling on negative thoughts, there are definitely exercises that can be done. But just go out and do the work yourself, right? If you want to work on these things, try and find ways yourself, right? People just expect everything to be told to them on social media. And I feel like people are so ignorant despite the abundance of knowledge we have access to nowadays because they just want everything to be told to them. There are these people who are like these TikTok activists who you'll see something like on the news. You'll see some like news story reported via TikTok and they'll think they know exactly what's going on. Like you have to sometimes sit down and read to learn what's actually going on before you jump to these conclusions. But some of these TikTok activists, they'll see one video about what's going on, and they'll immediately think they know exactly what's going on, they know all the nuance, and they'll jump and boom, they'll have their take already, they'll have their opinion formed. People are too lazy to go out and do the work and research and learn more. It's far easier to just consume whatever is given to you on TikTok, whatever jumbled up, summarized version of, extensive conflicts or with extensive histories. It's far easier to just accept whatever you're spoon fed by the algorithm instead of doing the actual intellectual labor and going out and learning about these issues. But that was sort of a tangent. Again, solutions-based message using shame. I mean, I don't think what she did was shaming people. I mean, I think it was a bit of a harsh way of saying it. She could have said it in a nicer way, but I think it was sort of like a wake-up call, right? I think that's the way to look at it, because some people need to sort of be forcefully snapped out of their way of thinking. And, like I said, when it's possible to spare a person's feelings, I can, but it's not always possible sometimes. And then the third comment, right? I thought you were going to be followed up with some advice. Sure, that's a revision that you can that you could say, hey, she should have given some advice. Sure, that's fair. Bottom line, the point of this video was just to address that sometimes on social media, people will not on social media, in general, people will try and avoid accountability. They'll always have excuses ready. And when they're not satisfied with where they are or with what they're doing, it's always going to be someone else's fault. It's never going to be their fault. There's always going to be some sort of outside factor. And so sometimes we just need to take accountability for our actions, for where we are. And we have to just be honest with ourselves, right? Not everyone is a victim. We can't all be victims, guys. And so the reality is that sometimes we make mistakes. Shocker. And sometimes we aren't where we are, not because of all these outside factors that we're attributing it to, but simply because we made a mistake. And that's okay. Admitting that is the first step to getting better. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a good day.